Today on Bench Briefs, we're looking at a recent decision from the Federal Court of Appeal that dives into the tricky world of environmental regulation and administrative law. The case is Canadian Nuclear Laboratories Ltd. Versus Canada's Attorney General, decided in 2026, and it raises important questions about how far federal regulators can go when interpreting their own powers under environmental statutes. So, what's this all about? Canadian Nuclear Laboratories, or CNL, is a major player in Canada's nuclear research and technology sector. Their operations involve handling nuclear materials, which naturally come with a lot of environmental oversight. At the heart of this dispute was a decision made by a federal environmental regulator concerning how a particular section of the environmental law should be interpreted and applied, specifically Section 73(3)(a) of the relevant statute. CNL challenged the regulator's decision, arguing that it went beyond what the law actually allowed. They said the regulator was overstepping its statutory authority by imposing requirements that weren't supported by the wording of the law. This kind of challenge is fairly common when companies feel that regulators are pushing the boundaries of their power, especially in complex fields like environmental regulation, where the stakes are high. To understand the case, it helps to break down the key facts. CNL was operating under a legal framework that required compliance with certain environmental standards. The regulator interpreted Section 73(3)(a) in a way that led to additional regulatory requirements for CNL's operations. CNL believed this interpretation was incorrect and that the regulator was exceeding its legal mandate. They sought judicial review, which is the court's way of examining whether a government decision-maker acted lawfully and within their powers. The legal questions the court had to consider were threefold. First, was the regulator's decision lawful? In other words, did the regulator stay within the boundaries of its statutory authority when it imposed these requirements? Second, what is the proper interpretation and application of Section 73(3)(a)? This meant the court had to look closely at the language of the statute, the purpose behind it, and how it should be applied in this context. Third, the court had to determine whether certiorari was the appropriate remedy in this case. Certiorari is a type of court order that quashes or nullifies a decision when it's found to be unlawful or outside the decision-maker's authority. This case is a great example of the ongoing tension between regulators and the industries they oversee. Regulators have a mandate to protect the environment and public health, which sometimes means interpreting statutes broadly to cover new or unforeseen risks. On the other hand, regulated parties like CNL want clarity and limits on how far regulators can go to avoid unpredictable or excessive obligations. The Federal Court of Appeal's decision helps clarify how courts will approach these disputes. It emphasizes the importance of interpreting statutory provisions in light of their purpose, but also respecting the limits of delegated authority. The court's analysis shows that while regulators do have some flexibility, they cannot simply rewrite the law or impose requirements that the statute does not support. Why does this matter beyond just CNL? Well, environmental law is a fast-evolving field, especially with growing concerns about climate change, pollution, and sustainable development. Regulators are often called upon to make tough decisions and interpret laws in ways that meet modern challenges. This case sets a precedent for how courts will review those interpretations and balance regulatory goals against legal limits. For companies operating in regulated industries, this decision is a reminder to carefully scrutinize regulatory actions and be prepared to challenge decisions that may overreach. For regulators, it reinforces the need to ground their decisions firmly in statutory authority and to be transparent about how they interpret their powers. In the bigger picture, this case contributes to the ongoing dialogue about administrative law and the rule of law in Canada. It highlights how judicial oversight serves as a check on regulatory power, ensuring that decisions are made within the framework set by elected lawmakers. This balance is crucial for maintaining public confidence in both environmental protection and the fairness of the legal system. Thanks for tuning in to Bench Briefs. We hope this episode helped unpack a complex case and shed light on why it matters for environmental law and administrative decision making in Canada. Be sure to join us next time for another dive into the legal stories shaping our country. Until then, take care.